Hello and welcome back to The Space Between, one of the top astronomy podcasts in the world, and for that matter, the universe. My name is Kolby Van Camp here with Dawson Wagner, and wherever you're tuning in from, whether that be Canada, the Netherlands, New Zealand, or even Norway, we're glad that you're here. And we've got all the quality space content zooming your way. We're still on our way to 2,000 streams and 1,000 followers on Spotify, so keep up the good work. If you haven't shared this podcast with someone today, send it to them. We've got a variety of content that works with everyone. We're super excited for the podcast today. We took a week off last week because midterms are real, folks, and it's kind of turned into midterm season here at Kansas State. But at the same time, we are really excited to get into today's episode because we're rested, we're refreshed. But this week, we're going to sit down with prominent astrophotographer and dark sky advocate, Bettymaya Foott. Bettymaya's work has been featured in the Los Angeles Times and National Geographic, and she also serves as an advocate to reduce light pollution with DarkSky International, the leading organization in the world for reducing light pollution safely around the globe to help preserve the beauty of the night sky. Bettymaya, welcome. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us.
Thanks, Kolby. Thanks, Dawson. It's an honor to be here with you today on the top astronomy podcast in the world and the universe. I was not aware of that.
We're up there. We're one of the top. Not number one, but we're getting there. Closer every week.
Number one in my heart.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Before we jump into our interview, we wanted to give you just a reminder of all the great content that we have coming up for you next week, as we're going to be meeting with Tony Darnell of Exoplanet Radio to discuss science communication, and then most significantly, we will be recording at the end of the month with Dr. John Mather, the Nobel laureate, which means that he won it, in physics to discuss his cutting-edge work with the James Webb Space Telescope. That's an interview you won't want to miss. And the slate of interviews that we have just keeps getting better and better as we end out the year. So definitely stick around, give us 5 stars, and follow our podcast wherever you're listening to us from so that you can stay up to date with all of our fantastic interviews. We're still trying to name the fan base. If you're listening on Spotify, there's an interactive feature connected to this episode where we want to hear from you. We've received 2 submissions so far for 2 different names. The Milkdromedans, which is kind of weird, but also kind of fun. And then the Tweeners, which I think is a joke between like tweens and I don't know. But it's supposed to be punny, and I kind of got a kick out of it. So thank you, Aaron Larson, for that particular submission. Type into the fan base what you want to be named in the thing below on Spotify. And if you don't listen to us on Spotify, just go to www.spacebetweenpodcast.com and you can contact us through that page as well. So, Dawson, it's time to get a little bit of a word from our affiliate for today's podcast, High Point Scientific. Let's hear that from them.
Yeah, so we're starting to exit galaxy season, RIP, but that means one of our biggest friends in the night sky, the Orion constellation, is starting to hit the skies here in the northern hemisphere, and that means I'm going to be investing in a range of new gear to get my best photos to date of the Orion Nebula, Horsehead Nebula, or maybe even the Greater Barnard's Loop that's in the Orion constellation. I'm going to be frequenting High Point Scientific, and I suggest that you do too for all your astronomical needs. Visiting the link in the description of this and every one of our episodes for your purchase will provide us with a small commission, which not only helps Kolby and I continue to make technical improvements for the show, but it also helps us make technical improvements to your astrophotography as well. We appreciate you, High Point Scientific.
Appreciate High Point Scientific indeed. Well, Bettymaya, first of all, thank you so much for joining the show. It's just an absolute pleasure to be sitting here with you today. And I guess my first question right out of the gate for you is, why astrophotography? What got you into that?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me again. And actually, it's dark skies that got me into astrophotography.
Okay.
I always loved photography, but I never really had a camera or anything. But I was working for Utah State Parks, and we were working on actually 12 different international dark sky park applications across the state of Utah, which are parks that are certified because of their dark sky quality and their good lighting and their education and outreach. So we were doing a lot of work for those parks, and part of the application was actually taking horizon shots of the night sky at the parks to document the different sky glow domes on the horizon. So I just used a state parks camera, was a Canon Rebel, a pretty entry-level cheap camera, and learned how to focus on a star, set up my panoramic shot, and as I got towards the south, all of a sudden, bam, the Milky Way just appeared on the back of the camera screen, and I was blown away. Like that's a moment. I think you ask all astrophotographers, their first Milky Way shot is something you will never ever forget. And I was totally hooked ever since that moment, because I didn't really think it was possible, let alone you could do it on a super entry level camera. And you see those photos and you don't really think they're real. But doing it for myself and really being under the stars and kind of touching that and having that experience was so transformative for me. I went out and I bought a camera. It was the first thing I ever went into debt for, and super, super glad I made that decision, even though my mom told me not to.
My first camera, I actually got it just last year, and I had always had an interest in astrophotography, but I always thought you had to get like a telescope and you had to be in this really dark sky with this like observatory and all of this equipment. And no, I didn't realize, like you, that you could just go outside with a DSLR and take really quality pictures, to be honest. I mean, you don't need a whole lot to get started. And that was a really transformative experience for me as well. So like, that's super cool. I love that. You have a really broad, I've gone through your galleries and I've gone through your Instagram, and you have really just fabulous pictures. What was it between deep sky or lunar or planetary photography that kind of really grabbed your interest? Like what's the area of astrophotography that you prefer the most to be shooting from?
I mean, I definitely consider myself kind of a landscape astrophotographer.
Okay.
My favorite thing to do is really connect the ground, the terrestrial with the celestial. And as a dark sky advocate and someone who works in the field of, reducing outdoor light at night, I've really found my niche in utilizing natural light to illuminate foregrounds. So I love shooting during blue hour when there's still a little bit of light from the setting sun, but you can see the Milky Way and you get that ethereal light on the foreground. And I also really love shooting in moonlight as well, because you get really cool angled lighting on your foreground. Even if the moon is super bright during moonrise or moonset, it doesn't totally wash out the Milky Way or other things in the night sky. And so that's been a fun challenge for me, is trying to utilize the natural light in the environment to add more dynamism to my photos.
Okay. Oh, that's really cool, because a lot of astrophotographers I know despise moonlight. They avoid it like the plague.
Yeah.
and they avoid kind of that blue period as the sun sets, because you blow out your exposure if that's kind of not what you're looking for. Because a lot of people are like, I want the really dark sky, I want it all the time, and I'm going to stay up till 4 a.m. to get that really dark sky. So that's interesting. I like how different people play around with their astrophotography, and that's something that I like experimenting with myself. Even though I'm more deep sky, I personally prefer to look at nebulae and nebulosity and globular clusters and that kind of stuff. But I really, really love the Milky Way work that you've done, because that's tough. That's tough. Usually, a really wide lens. You need something that can see a whole lot of the sky. Do you ever do any panels, or are you trying to stay in one particular shot?
Oh yeah, I definitely do a lot of panoramas. Every time I don't do a panorama, I'm like, oh, I should have done. Try to do panoramas as much as possible every time I go out and take photos. And yeah, but I also shoot with kind of the number one lens I use most often is the Sigma 14 millimeter f1.8.
Yeah.
Amazing lens. Also, I still use the Rokinon 24 millimeter f1.4. It was the first lens I ever bought like 8 years ago, and I still have that, and I still rock it on my Canon 6D, which is the first camera I ever bought. So yeah.
That's awesome. I know that I have a Rokinon 14 millimeter that I use from time to time. But I like my nifty 50. I sit right.
Oh, I used to have a nifty 50 too. I did get rid of that one, and I did get rid of my Rokinon 14, because 2.8 just on a 14 is really, unless you have some moonlight, it's really, really hard to get a lot of detail in your foreground. So if you upgrade that to a 1.8, it'll change your life.
Okay. Cool. I'll have to experiment with that. There aren't any particularly fascinating landscapes in Kansas, though. I have to admit, it's mostly just rolling fields. So
I have never been. So
really,
I'm sure you can find a good composition somewhere.
Well, that was actually one of my questions: is if you'd ever done any astrophotography in Kansas? Because if you haven't, I totally recommend that you should come to Kansas and try out some of our landscape. It might not be the geological things that you're looking for, like you have in a lot of your shots in the Southwest of the United States, but there's something pretty special about the Milky Way in a cornfield, or the Milky Way and like a wheat field and maybe a pond or something. It's really cool like that. So. Yeah. You should try it.
I feel like that's where aliens come to abduct people too, is in like cornfields, like the number one place.
Something like that.
I'm just waiting to get abducted. I'm really hoping.
Well,
so I'll be there. Count me in.
You'll find yourself in the space between. How about that? So cool. Well, let's talk a little bit about DarkSky International and the work that you do with them, because in Kansas, there's a whole lot of nothing, to be quite honest. There's scattered towns, and there's, on the eastern side of the state, you have the capital in Kansas City, and there's a lot of light pollution that comes from that. But as you get farther west, it really starts to clear up. But even now, when you look at like a dark sky map and you can see what the Bortle scale is, there are no Bortle ones in Kansas, which is crazy. You would think that there would be. You have to go either to southeastern Colorado or the northwestern panhandle of Nebraska to get to a Bortle 1. All of our photography is done in a Bortle 4, believe it or not. And that's in Kansas. It's in Kansas, where there's nothing but fields. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. So what is the mission, per se, of DarkSky International to get light pollution reduced around the world?
Yeah, well, our mission is to protect the night from light pollution. And the way that we go about that is really through our local volunteers, advocates, chapters, delegates all around the world. We are a super small staff here in Tucson, Arizona. We have about 10 full-time people. So as an international organization, that's not very many, right? So, but we do have 66 different chapters, 100 delegates, over 2,500 advocates. So people all over the world that are the local champions of the dark sky issue. And our goal is to really arm and equip them with the tools and the resources and the inspiration that they need to make changes in their own local communities.
Okay, cool. Dawson, I'm going to turn it over to you with your pressing questions.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of spoke about like local communities. What are some of those communities that you've been engaging and kind of in contact with? Who are some of the people that you interact with the most, or do you set up your own like branch there? Like, what is that process like?
Yeah, so literally everywhere in the world. I had somebody reach out from like Uzbekistan the other day. So it's like there's places I have to Google, like if they're countries or if they're cities, because I just never heard of them. So it's really cool. People come from all over the world. And that's what's so inspiring about the dark sky movement, is there are people who care about this from every corner of the globe. And the process is super simple. Like, we don't go out and say like, you should be a chapter or you should be a dark sky place. People come to us with their inquiries and we help them along the way to make it happen. So we really have chapters everywhere. And if you just go to our website, darksky.org, there's super easy ways to get involved. Probably the easiest way to get involved is just joining our Dark Sky Advocate Network, which you literally just need to put name, email, and where you live. And then you are signed up as an official dark sky advocate. You get invited we host monthly kind of advocate action meetings to help you get active in your community. We have a specific dark sky advocate newsletter with kind of insider dark sky info. And we have a global online community platform where you can connect with all of us at Dark Sky staff, as well as all the other dark sky advocates around the world, ask questions, share resources, and make dark sky friends.
That's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, I was gonna. You brought up kind of the global impact of it. What is the Under One Sky Global Conference that you're going to be having coming up in November?
Thank you for asking. I've been working very hard on this conference. So we have an annual conference every year, and the last 3 years we have done it entirely virtually, which is really cool because that makes it super accessible for anyone to join anywhere. And we actually do it over a 24-hour period. So as the coordinator of the conference, I will be basically up for 24 hours. But we do that because the world is round, right? And there's a session that's accessible in a good time zone for everyone around the world. So we start with like a global open. That's kind of a good time for everyone in the world. And then we go to East, Southeast Asia, Australia, New Zealand regional session. Then we have an engagement workshop. Then we go to the next regional session, another engagement workshop, one more of each of those, and then have a global close at the same exact time that we had the global open, only 24 hours later. And it's going to be super fun. We have incredible stories from dark sky advocates all over the world. And we also have really cool networking opportunities. We're using a brand new platform this year where you can kind of do instant networking with somebody. So it'll just pair you on a video chat with someone random and you have 5 minutes to talk to them, and then it'll pair you with somebody else. We have video discussion rooms that we're kind of theming all in different languages and also just in different themes that people might be interested in the dark sky movement. You can connect with people. You can like fill out your own profile. So it's going to be super fun. And I would recommend that everyone who can, please join. And if the registration fee is a barrier, we do have a scholarship application available because we want to make sure everyone who cares about dark skies can join.
Wow, that's really cool. That's a really cool organization and just a mission in general. How does one go about changing the light pollution in their own community? I mean, because I feel like there's a lot of bureaucracy that you have to get through to actually make that kind of change, a substantial change. And there are a lot of questions that come down to safety, like what happens at night when nobody's looking? Well, a lot of crime happens at night when nobody's looking, and the lights that contribute to light pollution help with that, or help prevent that, at least in some way. So how does one go about the bureaucracy of that to try and make a difference in their community?
Yeah, I mean, I would push back on your statement that the lighting helps deter crime. There really isn't like scientific unequivocal evidence that more light reduces crime. I mean, if that were the case, then there probably wouldn't be any crimes during the day as well, enough. Right? So our mission really is to bust the myth that more light is equal to more safe, and help people understand that actually better lighting can be more safe, because really bright, unshielded lights come right into your eye and actually make it harder for you to see, right? They reduce your visual acuity and make it harder to see into dark areas. Whereas fully shielded, dark sky friendly lighting doesn't do that. It actually increases the quality of the lighting of the area that you're trying to light up and makes it easier for you to see and not be so blinded. Glaring lights can also cause road accidents and make it less safe to drive in areas when you have those bright lights shining directly into your eye. So we always try to remind people that we are dark sky, not dark ground. It's really about improving the quality of lighting and not having no lighting at all. So we can have safety and lighting coexisting with dark skies if that light is necessary, and if it's done in a way that actually contributes to better illumination of the area, as opposed to just blinding everyone who's going by. Also, we definitely recommend motion sensor lighting, which can be a huge deterrent to crime. If somebody's coming up to your door and a light pops on, they don't know if it's just a motion detector or if it's, someone in the doorway with a gun, right? So dark sky friendly lighting actually contributes to safety, and that's a huge myth that we're trying to bust. But some of the ways that you can go about having better dark sky friendly lighting in your community or in your home is, it's actually entirely scalable, right? So you can start at your own home, right? Evaluate the lighting around your house. We actually have a home lighting assessment on our website. You can kind of print out and use to check out the lighting on your house. And basically, we just want you to follow the 5 principles for responsible outdoor lighting. So we worked on those with the Illuminating Engineering Society. And that's just kind of basically a checklist to to help you decide if your light is dark sky friendly or not. And they're actually written in order of importance. So
Okay.
the first one is your light needed at all? That's kind of the first one that everyone forgets about. We think about dark sky friendly lighting and all the other things, but we don't think about if we actually need that light to begin with. So a lot of times we don't. The second principle is your light shielded? So is it pointed down towards the ground or out into your neighbor's window or up into the night sky? The third is it too bright? Is your light only the amount of brightness needed, or is it way too bright? The fourth is it controlled? Can you put it on a timer, a dimmer, or a motion sensor to reduce the amount of light that's getting out to the environment? And the final principle is it warm in color? Warm lighting is lower wavelength and is generally less impactful to humans and the environment. So that is for your own house, but then you can scale it up, right? You can work on your community. We have HOA guidelines. You can work on getting guidelines just even in your own neighborhood. You can then work on getting lighting ordinances passed in your city. That's definitely hard to do, but it's not impossible. And we have sample lighting ordinances from all of our dark sky communities and just general models that we can help you with that. And then there's also statewide legislation and national legislation. Chile has a national light pollution law. Mexico actually does. France, Croatia. You'd be surprised. A lot of places are really taking this seriously. And then we're also working on addressing it at an international level through the United Nations and other international agreements. So it's really entirely scalable how people can take this and make it actionable in their own communities.
That's really cool. Dawson, what have you got?
Yeah, I was kind of curious. You were discussing kind of the maybe requirements or the different types of criteria, that might need to be met. What are those criteria? What are the types of luminaries that you suggest when installing certain lights?
Yeah, so basically you just want to make sure that light is fully shielded, and a super easy way to know that is if you're like looking at it right at eye level, can you see the bulb below it, or can you not? Is the bulb kind of tucked up inside of the fixture? And that'll tell you if that light is fully shielded or not. Secondly, you want to make sure it's just not super bright. So it depends on the installation, right? Like a street light is going to have a different wattage and lumen output than a porch light, right? Or just pathway lighting. So it really depends on your installation, what you're trying to light. And then of course we want it to be warm lighting. Kind of orange or ambery colored lighting is way better than kind of bright blue, bright white lighting. And that's because of that wavelength, because it kind of mimics what our bodies are used to at night, like firelight and sunset lighting. And I think it just looks better than kind of what reminds me of like prison yard or hospital lighting, which is that bright white blue light. So yeah, and if you're looking for a specific light, we have a dark sky approved lighting program on our website where you can search by the type of light, the type of installation, what you're trying to light, and then we have a bunch of list of approved products that we have certified as dark sky friendly.
Very cool. Coming up next, we're going to be talking more with Bettymaya Foott about all of the work that she's doing with DarkSky International, but then also her astrophotography, National Geographic, and so much more here on The Space Between.
Hi, my name is Ryan Gilbert. I'm a former sports broadcaster for Wildcat 91.9, K-State alum, and basketball recruiting editor for GoPowerCat.com. The last academic year was a historic one for the station, as Wildcat 91.9 was named the best college radio station in the nation by the Intercollegiate Broadcasting System Awards, the first national championship in program history. However, despite all the awards and success, the budget for Wildcat 91.9 continues to be cut year by year. I'll be perfectly frank with you. Either Wildcat 91.9 finds new funding through charitable giving, or it will permanently go off the air. That's why I'm asking you today to consider making a tax-deductible contribution to the station so that the longest continuously running college FM radio station in the nation can continue to train the next generation of media stars. To make a contribution or discuss options for creating an endowment fund, please reach out to us at www.wildcat919.com/donate. That's www.wildcat919.com/donate. Thanks so much. Go Cats, and always remember that at Wildcat 919, you belong.
Welcome back to the space between Kolby Van Camp and Dawson Wagner, sitting with Bettymaya Foott to be talking about the International Dark Sky Association and the work that they're doing to preserve the night sky for astrophotographers alike, but also for the average person, because it's good for your health, and there's also a benefit to just being able to see the night sky and the beauty of everything that exists beyond us here in the space between. Pretty interesting to be discussing with Bettymaya about just so much pollution that's existing around the world. What does it look like in the United States and beyond? And is the ocean the darkest spot in the world at this point? How does that play into the association and what they do?
Yeah, so light pollution is increasing globally at about 10% per year, which is way more than we previously thought. We kind of had the different studies we've had before said like 2%. And then a paper that actually came out in Science last year showed us that globally it's around 10% per year and a lot more in some particular regions. So it's definitely an emerging threat and one that we need to address right now. And basically, anywhere you go in the continental US, you are not going to have an entirely pristine sky. There's nowhere left that's not going to have some sort of impact of human lighting somewhere in the night sky. And basically, the only place that's left is the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But even then, there's a lot of light pollution in marine environments now, specifically from coastal areas, as well as from large fishing boats that use bright lights. Specifically squid fishing boats use bright lights a lot. And I was shooting in California once, and it actually looked like the sun was rising, but it was just a light from one squid fishing boat. So
wow.
But I would just like to add that while this is an issue that's growing and it's easy to feel overwhelmed by it, light pollution is the only kind of pollution that we can immediately remove from the environment, right? It's really difficult to take out plastics from the ocean or CO2 from the atmosphere. But when we shield a light or flip a switch, that pollution is immediately gone. So this is also a really hopeful topic because it's something that when we make changes, we can see immediate results. So that's what I like to focus on, is that this is something that is a really hopeful environmental topic as well, even though it is scary and overwhelming and increasing a lot.
Yeah, no, that's really important to underscore, because I know a lot of people in our program of study between Dawson and myself. We are mass communication students in our graduate program, and we have a number of colleagues that are really into environmental science and environmental communication. How do you talk about the environment? How do you go about lobbying governments in an effective way using scholarship to discuss these types of topics in persuasive ways that convinces people? Because clearly, the information itself is not convincing people, which is unfortunate. So what's a different tactic that you can use to try and convince people of the gravity of some of these situations? And it's super important, like you said, to underscore that this is as simple as turning off a light. It's as simple as flipping a switch. It's as simple as making sure that your light bulbs are fully shielded. And then once you've done that, then you can start to eliminate the pollution and see that immediate effect. So I agree with you. That's super important to underscore.
And I'll just say what we need to do, I think, is have policies enacted, because people can know that something is wrong and harmful, but that doesn't mean they're going to change their behavior about that, right? Like, I know that Crunch Wraps aren't super good for me, but I still eat them because they're delicious. And so but if there was a law that I couldn't eat a Crunch Wrap, then I wouldn't be able to eat that Crunch Wrap, right? So it's kind of about having policies in place that will ensure that the decisions around lighting are made correctly to benefit all living beings, instead of just kind of being complacent about it because there isn't any sort of regulation around it. So at DarkSky International, we're really trying to move towards really supporting our activists and advocates around the world to be enacting policies in order to cap light pollution where it's at and tip that scale to eventually reducing it.
Okay, very cool. Kind of a switch of gears, but I'm interested. When you go and engage with people around the world, is it purely through the internet, or do you get to travel as well?
I get to travel. Actually, I just got back from Jasper
Wow.
last on Tuesday. I got to go to the Jasper Dark Sky Festival in Canada,
Cool.
which was super awesome. Oh my God, I took some amazing photos there too. It was dark and beautiful, and we saw the aurora, which was just magical. Yeah, I spent some time in Chile and Brazil and Argentina this year as well. So super lucky dream job for me. I do get to travel. It isn't always regular. Sometimes it's just when opportunities arise and when funding is able to be provided, because we actually don't have a huge travel budget.
Sure.
But yes, I do get to travel, and I'm very lucky.
Is that an opportunity for you to pair your astrophotography with your advocacy in a fun and meaningful way?
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool. I aspire to be able to shoot the Veil Nebulae in detail one of these days soon. I'm slowly saving the money to invest in like the dedicated astro camera and a Red Cat telescope and that kind of stuff, so I can get some higher detail pictures. Because right now I just have an astro modified DSLR, but I'm really close. I'm really close to being able to photograph in more detail the things I want to photograph. So that's really cool. Do you have anywhere in the world that is like, I have to go back there, I love being there, and I just have to stay there for an extended period of time?
I mean, everywhere, but I mainly have places where I haven't been that I really want to go. And number one is New Zealand. I just feel like you get the southern aurora there, you get the mountains, you get the lakes, you get the Magellanic Clouds, you get like everything. And it's where it's Lord of the Rings, you go to Hobbiton and shoot the sky. Like, that's my number one goal in life now that I've been to Chile. Chile was number one for a while, and now it's New Zealand is really up there for me.
Okay, cool. Dawson, where do you want to travel to do some photography and study around the world?
I feel like, Australia. I mean, have you ever done any astrophotography in Australia, or do you know?
I have not, no.
Is there anybody from the DarkSky Initiative that has been trying to, help there? Is there a chapter there at all or anywhere?
We have a couple delegates in Australia. Carol Redford is a delegate, and she's done a lot of work with tourism in Western Australia, and it looks beautiful. When I was in Chile, we got to stay up at Cerro Tololo, which is right next to Cerro Pachon, which is where Vera Rubin is, Gemini South is. The Blanco telescope is on Cerro Tololo, which is studying dark energy, and we got to stay there at night. And of course, it's entirely cloudy the whole night, right?
No.
So, but I still went out to take photos because I have to, and had this beautiful shot set up looking over a bunch of little observatories, probably about 20 of them. And it was so bright. There was so much light pollution from everywhere around. I was blown away because they were like, come to Chile, it's the darkest place in the world, we have all these high class telescopes, and the clouds definitely reflect that light pollution, but it was wild. It blew my mind to see how much light pollution is there, even at some of the most prominent and important observatories in the world, like Vera Rubin, right? It's like 8.4 meter mirror, like
it's huge,
insane telescope that is dealing with light pollution, right? So it's an issue that's really, really important and affecting places even that are supposedly really dark.
Yeah. No, definitely. And the impact of it is just so prominent all around the world, which is why when I discovered it and I realized how huge of an issue it was, because I didn't know and I didn't care for a long time. And then I started taking pictures of the sky and I'm like, what is that stuff? And then, well, it's light pollution. It's like, wow. If we all just turned our lights off, like you would save so much money and energy. First of all,
save so much money, save the animals, save ourselves. Yeah. And I feel like as photographers, like we really start to understand the power of light. Yeah. Because you don't really think that light is super powerful or that moonlight is super bright, right? But then when you expose something for 20 seconds, 30 seconds, a couple minutes, right? You're like, wow, that light is bright, or that one like little headlamp blip like totally blew out my foreground, or like, we understand the power of light as photographers. And I feel like that's also what, as dark sky advocates, we're trying to get across, is that light is really powerful. And so just like as with everything, too much of it is harmful for us, and we need to use it wisely.
Totally. So as we wrap things up, because I know that you have an appointment coming up here in just a few minutes and we want to be sensitive to that. First of all, you've been featured in National Geographic. That's really cool. Can you touch on that for a second?
Sure. Yeah, actually, that was through DarkSky as well. So we actually hosted National Geographic out here in Tucson for a night under the stars with local kids from a school here, and just had National Geographic there to kind of observe and learn about like the work that we do, the education and outreach with kids in schools. And so it was super, super cool. And they did most of the photography for that specific event because we were working it. But I did share some time lapses with them, and they used them in that documentary, which was definitely a life goal. I cry a lot. Apparently, I cried when I saw that they used my time lapse for that, because that's every photographer's dream, right?
Oh,
to be featured in National Geographic.
That's really cool. You should be very excited and proud about that. You'll need to send me the video because I've been trying to find it and I wasn't able to find it in its entirety.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I will look for it. Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. As we wrap up the show, I have to ask, what's your favorite thing about space, astronomy, all of that? Like, what's a pressing topic that you wish you knew more about, but you thought it's really freaking cool anyway?
Oh, that's like two different questions. My favorite thing about space versus what I want to know more about are two very different questions. I am determined to figure out the issue, like what is inflation, what is dark energy, what is dark matter. I feel like if I think about it hard enough, it'll come to me. So
okay.
I mean, those, I love hearing about those. I love learning about those. Quantum physics is fascinating. All of this, all the cool ones, I just would love to learn more about. But my favorite thing about space, I think, is just the feeling that you get when you look up into the night sky, and you kind of realize that as much as you think you understand what's going on in the world and in the universe, that you really don't, right? And it's kind of the most humbling feeling in the world, looking up at the night sky and realizing that it's just an entire mystery that we're a part of. And I think there's so much magic in that feeling. And I think that also kind of connects us all as humans together, just in this wild world in the middle of some crazy galaxy, like hurtling through space. And that to me is the most important part about the work that we all do to get people connected to the night sky, because I think it connects us all together as well.
Wow, I couldn't have said it any better myself. That's just fantastic. I appreciate the sentiment. I appreciate everything that you've said so far today. Speaking of dark matter, Dawson is like our resident dark matter guru for the show, even though none of us are scientists. And we were able to sit down with a professor here at Kansas State who's one of the world's leading experts on dark matter and dark energy. And it's one of our previous episodes with Dr. Lado Samushia. So if you want to give that a listen, you might learn a couple of interesting things that maybe you haven't heard before. So that was exciting, and all of our listeners can do that too. So, yeah. Well, Bettymaya, thank you so much for your time. It was wonderful having you here, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you further. And I think it's pretty safe to say that Dawson and I are probably going to join DarkSky International in some meaningful way 100%. To be a part of the group.
It's been an honor to chat with you guys today. I really appreciate it and would love to stay in touch. And yeah, please reach out to me. We'd love to get you involved in the Advocates Network and all the work that we're doing at DarkSky.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you to all of our listeners. Go check us out, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you're getting your information from. If you want to join our Quantum Computer, which is our Discord server, you can do that through our Patreon, which you can find on our website, www.spacebetweenpodcast.com. Appreciate you tuning in. Clear skies, and we'll catch you in the space between.